And welcome. David Levin here, Raising Your Game Today. This is Tuesday, so we're talking about the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. Today, I want to talk again about Michal Jordan, the great Michal Jordan, arguably the best NBA player ever. I mean, you could make the case for some others, I suppose, and there's some new players coming along that are making it harder to even make a direct comparison between them. We'll see where he stands over time, but certainly, if not the best, one of the very few. And one of the things he was famous for was his mental game, just an incredible, unbreakable focus. I actually mention Michal Jordan pretty regularly in our trainings for that very reason. Now, the truth is, there are different aspects to focus, different kinds of focus. One is sort of a life priorities perspective, meaning, for example, you have the attitude of, I've got one job, it's to win, everything else is secondary, my family, my friends, they know that, that's just the way it is. From what I can tell, he did have that kind of focus, and I'm sure it's helpful as a competitor, though at some point it can definitely make for a less happy life overall, one-dimensional, self-focused, not much human connection. I'm reminded of the quote from Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes Formula One Racing, who said, "I've never seen a truly great driver who wasn't also a broken person," had some deep-seated need to prove something that made them sort of perfect fit to be a super competitor, but not maybe the happiest, best relationship skills. So it's a question of how far you want to go with that. But the other aspects of focus that Jordan was famous for are not a question. You want as much of those as possible, and there are two of them. The first is being able to take negative energy and turn it into fuel to take your game higher. There's a great story about how when he first came into the league, and other players didn't know him yet, he was a big trash talker, so he'd go after his opponents, and of course they would come back at him with their own trash talk. But teams started to notice that when that happened, his game would go to another whole level. And it turns out he was doing that on purpose. He could take that negative energy intentionally and use it to lift his game to a higher level. It got to the point where other teams started telling whoever was guarding him, "Look, don't get into that with him, okay? If you do it, he's going to kill us." That's a super great skill. Take things that would normally be negatives, fear, worry, anxiety, frustration, all the feelings that can come up around competition, and turn them into positive fuel. That's killer. The other focus you want is the ability to block out distractions in the moment, so you can stay totally focused and present. And he is the perfect illustration of that. There's another story. He was famous for chewing these big wads of gum while he was on the sideline. You may have seen pictures of that. So a journalist asked him one time, when you're on the sidelines, on a timeout between quarters, what are you thinking about? Is it the score, the next play, your opponent? What are you focused on in those moments? And his answer was, I think about chewing my gum. In other words, he's not really thinking at all. He's just completely present and focused. That is the most important mental game lesson of all. Peak performance comes from being fully focused and present. So the most important thing you can do to improve your game and be more consistent is to develop and strengthen that skill. That's the lesson. And it is a skill that can be developed like any other. So then the question is, how do you do that? How do you develop and strengthen that skill? We know how to work on the physical aspects of our game. We're very good at breaking down even the smallest move into its mechanics, working on those, training the relevant muscle groups, all of that. We're not nearly as good at training the mental game, even at the highest levels. I was talking with an assistant coach for an NBA team, and when I asked him what their mental game training looked like, he said it was basically, quote, watching video and having the maturity talk. In other words, they're not really training it. So, of course, our sports academy training is the kind of detailed, systematic, step-by-step process you need to get the greatest results in the shortest time. But there are still things you can do on your own to help. One is just to think about other times when you've been focused and present, when you've had that experience. It's actually a pretty common experience, especially when we're playing sports. So think about when you were having the most fun playing. That usually happens when you are the most fully present. So take yourself back to those moments. Really think about what it felt like being there. How did you move? What was your posture? What did it feel like in your body? How are you breathing? What do you imagine your facial expressions were like? Just try to remember in as much detail as possible what it felt like to be in that full present state. And then practice bringing yourself back there. Notice how you're feeling now. Notice how it's different. See if you can bring that feeling back. One helpful tip for that is to focus on something physical, the feeling of your feet on the floor or of your breath in your body. In the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, he suggests focusing on the seams of the ball. Putting your attention on something physical like that, very much like Michal Jordan was doing when he's thinking about chewing his gum, goes a long way to helping you learn that powerful mental game skill of being able to stay focused and present no matter what's going on around you. So those are the mental game lessons from Michal Jordan. Turn negative energy into positive fuel and do whatever you can to stay focused and present. All right, if you'd like to learn more about our mental game training options, both our Sports Academy training and our Advanced Mental Game Mastery course, check out raiseyourinnergame.com. Otherwise, let me know any questions. Keep up the good work. I'll see you next time.